Let me tell you, you ever wake up one morning, stretch your back, walk outside into the crisp mountain air, and realize half your hard-earned firewood is just gone? Like magic, not a trace left, except for some bark and sawdust blowing in the wind. Yeah, that happened to me. Now, you'd think I'd misplaced it or maybe miscounted after a long week splitting logs until my arms felt like rubber bands. But you don't forget the sting of blisters or the sound of an axe biting deep into frozen oak. You know what I mean? That wood was my insurance policy for a Colorado winter, stacked neat behind my old cabin like a monument to self-reliance. Except this time, someone else decided they needed my woodpile more than I did. The drag marks in the snow were pretty much a smoking gun, winding straight across my backyard and right through the property line, straight to Karen's house. Now, if you haven't had the pleasure, Karen was our HOA president, the kind of woman who treated her clipboard like a scepter and her opinions like the law. She once threatened to fine me because my mailbox wasn't quite beige enough. You get the idea. So when I marched over and found my firewood stacked in her yard, all tidy and perfect, I just about lost it. Karen, of course, didn't blink. "Oh, good morning," she chirped, in that syrupy voice that means trouble. "I had to relocate your firewood, HOA regulations and all. You know how pests can be." I cut her off. "By stealing it, you mean?" She just smiled, all superior. "Not stealing, just protecting the neighborhood standards." I could have argued, but the truth is, when you're up against the HOA queen, logic doesn't get you far. So I just clenched my jaw, watched her pretend she was the hero, and walked back home with my hands empty and my blood boiling. That night, I sat by my cold fireplace, listening to the wind rattle the pines outside. The forecast was calling for a big one. First major snowstorm of the season. The kind that buries the road and drops the temperature so low your teeth ache. I had a backup propane heater, but it felt like a Band-Aid on a broken leg, you know? I kept staring out the window at Karen's place, watching for any sign she'd wised up. Instead, all I saw was a thin trickle of smoke from her chimney, my firewood burning away, her living room probably as warm as July. But funny thing about mountain winters, there's always a twist. The storm hit harder than expected. By midnight, snow had swallowed the road. The wind was howling like a freight train. And the temperature dropped so fast you could feel the cold leaking through the walls. I managed to keep my little heater humming, but Karen? Not so much. Sometime around 2 in the morning, I noticed the smoke from her chimney had stopped. Hours ticked by, and nothing. That's when I figured it out. She'd burned through that woodpile in one night. People like Karen, they don't understand. You gotta ration, you gotta build a bed of coals, bank the fire, respect how fast wood can disappear when you're careless. By the time the storm was at its wildest, there was a frantic banging on my front door. I opened it, and there she was, Karen, hair wild, snow plastered to her coat, lips trembling so hard she could barely speak. "Please, I need help. The firewood's gone. My heater won't start, and the house is freezing." For a split second, I wanted to just close the door, tell her, "Tough luck. HOA standards don't keep you warm, do they?" But she looked so small, so lost, all her queen bee energy gone, just another person scared of the cold. I let her in, but I wasn't about to let her off easy. "You burned it all, didn't you?" I asked, and she just nodded, eyes glued to the floor. "I didn't realize," she muttered. I tossed her a blanket. "No free rides here. If you want to stay warm, you're helping me tomorrow. There's still an old pile of logs buried in the shed. We dig, we split, we survive." Morning came, sky pale and cruel, snow up to our knees. Karen looked like she'd never seen real work in her life, complaining, grumbling, slipping every few steps. But she kept at it, hands numb, cheeks red, because there's nothing like a mountain storm to humble even the proudest HOA president. By midday, we dragged and split enough. Would to last another 2 days, sweat freezing on our foreheads, breath hanging in the air like ghosts. When we finally got that fire going, it felt like salvation. For the first time, Karen just sat quietly, no clipboard, no speeches, no rules, just gratitude in the way she watched the flames. I sipped my coffee, felt the heat creep back into my bones, and looked over at her. Firewood's not just about the wood, you know. It's work. It's patience. It's respect for what winter can do. She nodded, eyes watery, humbled in a way I'd never seen. I was wrong, she said, soft as a whisper. I just thought rules were enough. I shrugged, couldn't help but grin. Nature doesn't care about your rules. When the storm finally broke, the whole neighborhood was different, glittering white, quiet as a cathedral, the world reset by one night of chaos. Karen tried to make amends, hauling firewood for the old couple down the road, shoveling driveways, apologizing to anyone who'd listen. Some folks snickered behind her back. Others just nodded, knowing that in these mountains, everyone gets a lesson sooner or later. That night, with the fire blazing, Karen sat across from me, humbled but human, finally understanding that community matters more than control, that sometimes you have to help, even the folks who've wronged you. The storm had washed her clean. Maybe not forgiven, but changed. And here's the thing. I still lock up my firewood now. But every time I see Karen trudging through the snow with a shovel or a pile of logs, I remember that winter's a better teacher than any HOA rulebook. Sometimes justice shows up on a frozen wind, in the lesson nobody asked for, but everybody remembers. So tell me, what would you have done? Slammed the door and let her freeze, or opened up and let the storm teach both of you something new? Drop your thoughts below. Let's hear where you stand. And if you've ever battled an HOA or outlasted a mountain winter, hit that like button, subscribe for more stories, and share this with someone who's ever had to fight for what's right. Stay warm out there. But, just when I thought maybe, just maybe, things in the neighborhood would settle, winter had a way of reminding you how quickly people forget the lessons they swore they'd never need again. Fast forward about 2 weeks. Snow still blanketed the world, but now the edges were sharp with ice, and everyone was getting cabin fever. Karen kept her head down, no more clipboard patrols. Just an awkward smile and a wave whenever we crossed paths. For a while, I thought the mountain had finally tamed her. Then came the morning I woke up to a frantic knocking, again. Not Karen this time, but old Mr. Fisher from 2 cabins down, the one who always wore that ridiculous trapper hat and told stories about elk so big you'd think he was describing dinosaurs. He looked rattled. "Hey, you got a minute?" he asked, voice thin as a reed. "Something's wrong with the creek. Water's backing up at the culvert. I think the beaver dam's about to burst." Now, I'd always prided myself on knowing the land better than most, but that creek was the lifeblood of the whole street. If it went, half our cabins would be swimming by nightfall. So I pulled on my boots and followed him. Wind slicing at my face, the air biting hard enough to remind you not to dawdle. Down at the creek, a couple more neighbors had gathered, bundled and nervous, peering at the swollen, ice-choked water. Sure enough, the dam looked ready to give. Logs creaking, water foaming, a real mess. And wouldn't you know it, Karen showed up, huffing and red-faced, bundled in way too many layers. Clipboard nowhere in sight. She glanced around like she might fade into the background, but when she saw the trouble, her old instincts kicked in. "We need to call someone," she said, voice shaking just a little, maybe the county or the HOA board. I couldn't help but laugh. "Karen, by the time some committee gets here, you'll need a boat to get home." A few neighbors chuckled. The moment was tense, but I could see something shifting in her eyes, pride wrestling with fear. That's when the twist came. Out of nowhere, little Benji, a kid from the next cabin over, maybe 10 years old, freckles, always dragging a sled or building some contraption out of scrap, pipes up, "My granddad says you gotta poke a hole in the dam, just enough to let the water out slow, or else it'll all blow at once." We all looked at each other. Sometimes wisdom comes from the smallest voice. So there we were, a ragtag bunch, shovels, axes, a garden rake, even a broken canoe. Paddle, taking advice from a kid. Karen hesitated, eyes darting, but finally, she grabbed a shovel and slogged down the bank right beside us. No commands, no speeches, just work. It was cold, wet, absolute chaos. At one point, Mr. Fisher slipped and nearly went into the water, but Karen, of all people, grabbed his arm and hauled him back. Never thought I'd see the day. Bit by bit, we chipped away at the dam, letting the creek breathe again, the pressure easing. By the time we finished, everyone was soaked and frozen, but we stood there together, watching the water settle, steam rising off it in the dawn light. For a minute, nobody said a word. That afternoon, the neighborhood felt different, closer, somehow. Folks started knocking on each other's doors, checking in. swapping supplies. Even Karen stopped by my place, holding a mug of instant coffee, cheeks pink, hair wild from the wind. She looked around my cabin, fire crackling, warmth thick in the air. "I guess you were right about mountain living," she said, a little sheepish, a little grateful. "You can't go it alone up here, can you?" I just shrugged, grinning. Nobody makes it alone. Not when the snow gets deep and the creek starts rising. The mountain doesn't care who's in charge. Either we watch out for each other, or we all go down together. She sipped her coffee, eyes distant, like she was finally seeing the forest instead of just the rules. But before you start thinking this is some neat happy ending, let me tell you, people change, but old habits don't die easy. Couple nights later, I catch Karen trying to politely remind a neighbor about their Christmas lights being a safety hazard. She caught my eye, though, and laughed. All right. Maybe not tonight. Progress, I guess. Looking back, I realized those 2 weeks changed the neighborhood in a way that no meeting or fine or HOA newsletter ever could. Struggle in the snow, a crisis by the creek, a fire shared when things got rough. That's what makes a community. Not perfection, not rules, just folks helping folks when it matters. So here's my question for you. What's the thing that finally made you trust your neighbors? Was it a storm, a crisis, or just a cup of coffee on a cold afternoon? Drop your story in the comments. Smash that like if you've ever had to dig someone out of trouble, and share this with anyone who knows what it's like to be humbled by a mountain winter. Because around here, the real lessons never come easy, and the best stories never really end.